Welcome, friends. Come in and make yourself comfortable, whether you're beneath a blanket, resting against a soft pillow, or watching the last light fade. I am glad you're here. Let the room grow quiet and the worries of the evening settle beyond reach. There is no hurry now. The lamps may burn low, the blankets may be drawn closer, and the silence between distant sounds may feel longer than it did an hour ago. So, before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these journeys into the past, and let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. Tonight, we are stepping back into the age of the Tudors, into a royal palace at the moment when daylight slips away from its windows and the life within its walls begins to change. The palace does not fall asleep all at once. It settles slowly, room by room, passage by passage, like a great ship coming to rest upon dark water. What happens after sunset is quieter than the ceremonies of the day, yet no less ordered and perhaps more intimate. Across the roofs, the final light lies pale upon lead gutters, chimneys and carved stone. Beyond the walls, roads are turning grey. A few late riders approach through mud, their cloaks darkened by mist, while villagers farther away close shutters against the cold. In fields beyond the royal estate, workers move toward cottages where pottage waits near the hearth, and wool blankets have been aired over benches. The palace, however, remains awake. Within its courtyards, the changing hour is marked by bells, some ring from the royal chapel, others from a parish church or distant monastery. Bells measured labour, warned of danger, guided travellers, and shaped days in which few people owned clocks. No one can quite agree how clearly every bell could be heard through the thick walls of a Tudor residence, but those who lived there knew the language of sound, a summons, a prayer, or the beginning of night. At the outer gate, porters begin securing the palace. Heavy oak doors, bound with iron, are checked before darkness settles fully. Bolts are drawn, keys are counted, visitors must be admitted, turned away, or directed toward lodging beyond the walls. A messenger bearing a sealed letter may be questioned about its urgency. A servant returning late from the market might have to explain his delay. The gatehouse holds worn benches, lantern hooks, account books, and the smell of damp wool. Guards carry bills, spears, or staffs of office rather than shining armour. They watch faces, listen for hoofbeats, check tokens, and remember who may pass. The palace is a household, a court, and sometimes a government, where rank determines which door a person may enter. As darkness gathers, servants move through galleries carrying lights. Beeswax candles are reserved for wealthier rooms because they burn more cleanly and smell sweeter than tallow. Tallow candles, made from animal fat, are cheaper and common in working spaces, though their smoke lingers beneath low ceilings. In important chambers, candles may be set in silver or brass holders. Elsewhere, a simple iron pricket is enough. Lighting a Tudor palace is labour. A flame must be carried from hearth to taper, and from taper to candle. Wicks require trimming. Dripping wax must be watched. Curtains, rushes, wooden screens, and tapestries stand dangerously close to open flame. Fire is a constant fear in a building filled with timber roofs and crowded sleeping spaces. Some chroniclers claimed that servants patrolled for sparks, though routines differed from one residence to another. The floors are often strewn with rushes. Fresh rushes soften stone or tile and release an earthy scent when stepped upon. Lavender, rosemary, or meadowsweet might be mixed among them in better chambers. Yet rushes also trap dust, crumbs, fleas, and the remains of daily life. They are changed more often in royal rooms than in poorer homes, though perhaps not as often as anyone sleeping near the floor would have wished. The palace changes character as light withdraws. During the day, colour comes from painted ceilings, embroidered hangings, polished plate, and bright clothing. At night, all of this narrows into islands of firelight. Gold thread glows briefly and disappears. Faces emerge from shadow, then soften again. Long corridors become uncertain spaces where a familiar doorway may seem farther away than it did at noon. Servants close shutters where cold air enters through imperfect frames. Glass is costly, and not every window is fully glazed. Some openings may be covered with horn, cloth, or wood. Thick curtains hold warmth, while wall hangings reduce the chill rising from stone. Braziers may be brought into private chambers. though charcoal fumes are dangerous, and people did not always understand why poor air could become deadly. Outside, the courtyards grow quieter, dogs settle near kitchens and stables. A groom shakes out damp hay while another checks late-arriving horses. Stable lanterns glow behind slatted doors, and the smell of straw mingles with wood smoke. Rain begins lightly against the roofs, soft enough to sound like fingers brushing cloth. Water runs from gutters into dark yards. A watchman lifts his cloak around his shoulders. In the chapel, a candle burns before an image of the Virgin or a favoured saint, its flame trembling whenever a door opens. Even in a palace surrounded by guards and walls, people look for protection beyond the visible world. Night is believed to bring particular dangers. Thieves prefer darkness, but so do wandering spirits, harmful airs, sudden illness, and dreams interpreted as warnings. A piece of coral, a small cross, a written charm, or a saint's medal might be carried close to the body. Historians continue to debate how clearly people separated official religion from older habits, for in daily life the two often rested side by side. And so the palace enters darkness not with silence but with preparation. Keys turn, candles brighten, shutters close. Fires are stirred. Guards take their places beneath gateways where the wind moves through narrow arches. The great household draws inward behind oak doors and stone walls, while beyond them the muddy roads empty. The market stalls stand bare, and the last bell fades across the fields. For a little while, the palace seems almost peaceful, yet behind its glowing windows, supper is approaching. Servants are still hurrying, and hundreds of people are finding their proper place in the long order of the night. Within the walls, the palace household begins to arrange itself according to rank, duty, and privilege. Darkness does not erase the court's order. If anything, it makes that order more visible. Every person has a place to stand, a door through which to pass, a chamber where he or she may wait, and a superior whose permission may be required before moving farther. The Tudor palace is not simply the monarch's home. It is a crowded organism made up of noble families, royal officers, clerks, musicians, guards, cooks, laundresses, grooms, pages, chaplains, messengers, and servants are attached to important guests. Depending on the residence and the season, hundreds of people may be gathered beneath one collection of roofs. Some remain only for a few days. Others spend years following the court from palace to palace, carrying trunks, bedding, documents, plate, clothing, and the many small necessities of royal life. The highest-ranking courtiers withdraw toward the chambers closest to the monarch. Their access is a mark of trust. A man permitted to enter the privy chamber enjoys far greater influence than one left waiting in an outer hall. A lady who serves near the Queen may hear conversations unavailable to those of equal birth but lesser position. Proximity becomes its own form of power. Lower servants wait in passages or working rooms, listening for bells, footsteps, or a spoken command. A page may be sent to fetch wine. A groom of the chamber may be asked to carry a message. A yeoman may be ordered to find a missing cloak lined with fur. Even after sunset, the court remains in motion, though its movements become quieter and more careful. Clothing itself reveals the hierarchy. A nobleman's gown may be trimmed with sable or velvet, while a servant wears coarse wool in the colours associated with the royal household. Livery is more than practical dress. It shows whom a person serves and where loyalty is expected to lie. Some servants receive cloth as part of their wages, and the quality of that cloth can indicate status almost as clearly as a title. In colder months, people remain wrapped in cloaks indoors. Palaces are impressive, but they are rarely warm throughout. Fires heat only limited spaces, and long galleries can hold the chill of stone well into the evening. A servant summoned across the palace may pass from a smoky kitchen into a freezing stairwell, then into a chamber made almost stifling by candles and a crowded hearth. The household officers oversee this complexity. The Lord Chamberlain, the steward, the comptroller, and various masters and clerks divide responsibility for food, lodging, access, and discipline. Their duties may sound grand, but much of their work depends upon lists, keys, accounts, and arguments over who is entitled to what. Every candle, loaf, pitcher of ale, bundle of firewood, and length of linen must be supplied. Waste is watched, at least in theory. Servants are expected to account for provisions. Leftover wax may be collected. Broken candles might be melted down. Scraps from the royal table can pass through several hands before reaching the lowest members of the household. Those who recorded court life never fully agreed on how strictly such rules were followed. Regulations survive in careful detail, yet daily practice was often untidy. A servant might conceal a portion of the meat for later. A clerk might overlook a missing jug. A noble guest might claim more bedding than had been assigned. In a household this large, rules could be firm on parchment and flexible in the corridor. Visitors also contribute to the evening confusion. Petitioners who hope to gain attention may wait near outer chambers, carrying folded documents tied with string or sealed with wax. Some have travelled along muddy roads for days. Their boots bear the marks of rutted lanes, village crossings, and market squares. They may have slept in inns where straw mattresses were shared with fleas, or in monastery guest houses where bells interrupted the night. Once inside the palace, such travellers discover that reaching the royal presence is far more difficult than reaching the royal gate. A petition may pass through secretaries, ushers, and gentlemen before it comes anywhere near the monarch. Many visitors rely upon a patron who can speak on their behalf. Without such help, they may spend hours watching doors open for others. At dusk, ushers begin directing people away from rooms where they no longer belong. A gesture, a lowered voice, or the position of a staff can be enough. The court depends upon signals understood by those accustomed to its customs. To be corrected publicly is embarrassing. To remain where one has no right to stand may appear suspicious. Some guests are provided with chambers. Others sleep in lodgings outside the palace or in nearby houses commandeered for the court's use. When the royal household arrives in a town, local life can be disrupted. Food prices rise, stables fill, inns become crowded. Household officers sometimes claim rooms, bedding, and supplies through royal authority, leaving residents to manage as best they can. Inside, servants prepare pallets and truckle beds for those of lower rank. A truckle bed is a low frame kept beneath a larger bed and pulled out at night for an attendant. In crowded rooms, people may sleep 2 or 3 to a mattress. Privacy is limited, and solitude can be regarded less as a comfort than as a vulnerability. A young servant newly arrived from a distant village may find the palace bewildering. He must learn which staircase belongs to which household division, which officer may punish him, and which noble must never be addressed casually. He must understand when to bow, when to speak, and when to become almost invisible. Mistakes are remembered. A spilled cup, a late message, or an improperly closed door can bring a fine or dismissal. Yet service also offers opportunity. A capable page may rise. A clerk may gain influence through reliable work. A groom who remains close to the monarch may hear matters of consequence. The palace hierarchy is rigid, but not entirely still. Beyond the windows, the rain continues, faint and steady. It falls upon the roofs, the dark gardens, and the emptying road beyond the gatehouse. Within, candle flames lean whenever a door opens. Footsteps soften upon rushes. Somewhere in the distance, a chapel bell marks the hour, its sound passing through stone corridors like a slow breath. The household listens, though no one pauses for long. A servant carries clean napkins toward the hall. A guard receives his instructions. A visiting gentleman adjusts his fur-lined collar and waits to be noticed. In a smaller room, clerks bend over accounts by wavering light, their fingers stained with ink. The palace is settling, but it is not yet at rest. Its many ranks are moving into position, from those nearest the royal bedchamber to those sleeping beside kitchen walls. Each person is held within the same darkened residence, yet each experiences a different palace, one of privilege, one of duty, one of ambition, or simply one of work. And as the evening deepens, all of them are drawn toward the next great rhythm of the household, the serving of supper beneath candlelight. The approach of supper changes the movement of the palace once again. Corridors that had seemed quiet begin to fill with servants carrying folded cloths, polished cups, covered dishes, and baskets of bread. Doors open and close more frequently. The smell of roasting meat drifts outward from the kitchens, mixing with beeswax, damp wool, wood smoke, and the faint green scent of rushes crushed beneath many feet. In the greater hall, long tables are prepared beneath hanging tapestries. The room may be grand, but its comfort depends upon constant work. Servants straighten benches, set out drinking vessels, and lay fresh cloths over boards resting on trestles. These tables can be dismantled when the meal is finished, leaving the hall open for other uses. The familiar phrase of removing the board is rooted in this simple practice, though the work itself is less graceful than the words suggest. At the upper end of the hall stands the high table. It is raised upon a platform so that rank can be seen as clearly as it can be heard in formal titles. The monarch may dine there, or perhaps eat more privately elsewhere, depending upon the residence, the occasion, and personal preference. Tudor court life is filled with such variations. No one can quite agree whether every surviving household rule describes a practice followed each evening or an ideal that officers hope to maintain. Wherever the monarch eats, ceremony matters. Important guests are seated according to status. Those closest to royal favour occupy places that others notice immediately. A small change in seating may inspire days of whispered interpretation. Courtiers understand that a place at table is never merely a convenient place to consume food. It is a visible statement about trust, honour, and access. Before the meal, hands are washed. Servants carry ewers of scented or warmed water and basins for those of rank. Clean linen towels follow. This ritual is practical in a world where food is often handled directly, but it is also a mark of courtesy. Guests are expected to present clean hands and trimmed nails. Medieval and Tudor etiquette could be surprisingly particular, even when the floors beneath the tables were scattered with rushes and the air above them clouded with smoke. Bread is placed upon the tables, sometimes in the form of thick slices used as trenchers. In earlier centuries, stale bread trenchers had commonly supported portions of meat or sauce, and the custom still survives in varying forms. At noble tables, metal or pewter plates are increasingly familiar, yet bread remains central to the meal. Afterward, used trenchers may be given to servants, the poor, or household animals, though the exact destination depends on their condition and the generosity of the house. Ale and wine are poured, water is consumed, but suspicion of its quality is common, particularly in crowded settlements where wells and channels may be contaminated. Ale is part of everyday nourishment and is often weaker than the drink imagined today. Wine, more costly and frequently imported, signals wealth. It may be diluted, spiced, or warmed in cold weather. The royal cup receives particular attention. A cupbearer or trusted servant may taste drink before presenting it, a practice associated with fear of poison. The danger is not entirely imaginary, yet it grows larger in courtly rumour. Sudden illness can easily be blamed upon a tainted dish, a hostile rival, or the hidden malice of a servant. Some chroniclers claimed that elaborate precautions surrounded royal meals, though historians continued to debate how consistently such measures were observed. Dishes arrive in courses: roasted beef, mutton, venison, capons, rabbits, or game birds may appear depending upon season and supply. Fish is essential on fast days, when religious rules restrict meat from warm-blooded animals. Pike, salmon, eel, cod, herring, or stockfish might be served fresh, salted, dried, or smoked. Wealth allows variety, but even a royal household must respect the calendar of the church. Sauces are thickened with bread and sharpened with vinegar or verjuice, the sour juice of unripe grapes or crab apples. Spices such as pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and mace are valuable, but not used simply to disguise spoiled meat, as later stories sometimes claim. They display status, create fashionable flavours, and form part of a medical understanding in which foods possess warming, cooling, moistening, or drying qualities. A dish may be selected not only for taste but for its supposed effect upon the body. A person believed to possess a cold constitution might be offered warming spices. Lettuce can be regarded as cooling and sleep-inducing. Certain wines are thought to aid digestion, while heavy meats are balanced with sour sauces. The language of humours is woven into dining, medicine, and daily judgment, even when appetite quietly overrules theory. Servants stand ready behind those who eat. They carve, pour, replace napkins, and remove dishes with practiced attention. Tudor carving is a specialised skill, governed by traditions concerning which cuts should be made from each animal. A trained carver is expected to handle knife and meat with elegance, avoiding waste and presenting portions suitable to rank. A poorly carved bird might not cause a political crisis, but at court it could certainly cause embarrassment. Knives are commonly brought by diners or provided at the table, while forks remain unusual in England for much of the period. Fingers, spoons, and knives do most of the work. Two people may share a drinking cup or a dish, and courtesy requires care. One should not return a gnawed bone to a common plate, reach across another guest, or wipe greasy fingers upon the tablecloth when a napkin is available. Conversation rises and falls beneath the rafters. News from distant roads is exchanged. A courtier speaks of a hunting party. A cleric mentions trouble at an abbey. A messenger may bring word of weather delaying travellers at a flooded crossing. Around the high table, talk is measured, for a careless opinion can travel farther than intended. In the lower parts of the hall, conversation is livelier, though servants remain alert to the presence of officers. Music may accompany the meal. Lutes, viols, pipes, or soft voices fill the intervals between courses. Musicians occupy an uncertain social position valued for their skill, welcomed into noble rooms, yet still expected to remain conscious of hierarchy. Their melodies soften the scrape of benches and the clatter of vessels, rising towards soot-dark beams where smoke gathers beneath the roof. Outside, the rain has eased. Water drips slowly from carved gutters into the courtyard. Beyond the walls, cottages are dark except for a few low hearths, and a traveller on the road may see the palace windows shining through mist like a cluster of amber stars. Within the hall, candlelight trembles across silver plate and embroidered sleeves. For a brief moment, the entire household seems gathered within one warm circle, protected from the wet night beyond. Yet the feast is never shared equally. At the upper tables, dishes are plentiful and carefully presented. Farther down, portions are simpler. In kitchens, scullions may eat standing or wait for scraps. Guards on duty receive food according to their station, and stable workers may take their supper beside lanterns and sleeping horses. A palace meal reveals not one household but many households nested inside one another. As the evening continues, sweet dishes, cheese, fruit preserves, wafers, or spiced wine may appear. Sugar is expensive and valued almost as a medicinal substance. Marchpane, a paste of almonds and sugar, can be shaped and decorated for important occasions. Comfit seeds or spices coated in sugar may be served at the close of the meal to freshen the breath and aid digestion. At last, hands are washed again, grace is spoken, cups are gathered, cloths folded and benches shifted. The grand display begins to dissolve almost as soon as it ends. Courtiers withdraw toward private chambers, while servants remain behind among crumbs, bones, spilled ale, and cooling dishes. The hall grows dimmer as candles are removed one by one. Music fades into distant passages. The polished order of supper gives way to the quieter labour that follows every royal meal, and below the decorated chambers, the palace kitchens continue glowing against the dark. Below the decorated chambers, the palace kitchens remain bright long after the final dishes have left the hall. Their fires are lower now, but they are not extinguished. Red coals glow beneath their iron grates, spits turn more slowly, and the great room breathes out heat into passages already cooling with the night. The kitchens are among the busiest and least restful places in the palace. They occupy a world of their own, governed by bells, shouted instructions, lists of provisions, and the authority of senior cooks. During the meal, every movement has been timed. Meat has been roasted, sauces thickened, pies sealed, fish dressed, and dishes carried through service passages toward the waiting tables. Now, when the courtiers have withdrawn, another kind of labour begins. Platters return bearing bones, crusts, spilled gravy, and scraps of meat. Some remains are still valuable. A piece of venison untouched at the high table may be set aside for an officer of the household. Bread trenchers might be distributed to lesser servants or placed in baskets intended for charity. Bones can be boiled again for broth, while fat may be collected for cooking, soap, or candles. In a household of this size, almost nothing useful is discarded without consideration. Yet the process is not always as orderly as household regulations suggest. Those who wrote kitchen ordinances imagined careful accounting, clean division, and honest service. In practice, a scullion may slip a crust beneath his tunic, a cook might reserve a favoured morsel, and a servant sent to carry leftovers could lose part of them along the way. Some chroniclers complained constantly of theft and waste, though it is difficult to know whether royal kitchens were unusually dishonest or merely unusually documented. At one end of the room, scullions begin washing pots, pans, ladles, and spits. Their work is among the harshest in the household. Water must be carried, heated, and emptied. Grease clings to iron vessels and must be scrubbed away with sand, ash, rough cloth, or bundles of straw. The floor grows slick, sleeves become soaked, smoke stings the eyes. The youngest workers may spend hours turning roasting spits by hand. Though mechanical devices and small dogs trained to run within wheels are sometimes associated with later kitchens, no one can quite agree how common such devices were in every Tudor palace, and much still depended upon human strength. A boy assigned to the spit might stand close enough to the fire for one side of his face to burn while the other remained cold. The great fireplaces dominate the room. Their stone openings are wide enough to hold several cooking fires at once. Hooks, chains, cauldrons, and iron bars hang above them. Soot coats the rafters and settles into cracks. The heat can be punishing during service, yet after midnight the same kitchen may become strangely cold when the fires have fallen, and draughts enter through vents and doors. Senior cooks move among the workers, checking what has been saved and what must be prepared for morning. The palace will require bread before sunrise, broth for the sick, hot water for chambers, and food for guards finishing the night watch. Some ingredients must be soaked, others must be salted or covered against rats. Dough may be left to rise near a warm wall, while stock simmers slowly beneath a lid. The stores adjoining the kitchen are guarded carefully. Salt, spices, sugar, flour, butter, dried fruit, and preserved fish all represent money. Pepper and cinnamon may be kept under lock, not because every pinch is counted with perfect accuracy, but because their value makes them tempting. Keys are carried by trusted officers, and access is restricted according to rank. Meat hangs in cool larders, fish is packed in barrels, hams, onions, and herbs are suspended from hooks or beams. In winter, the chill helps preservation. In summer, flies and heat make the work more difficult. Vinegar, salt, smoke, and careful timing reduce spoilage, though none can entirely prevent it. A Tudor kitchen smells richly, but not always pleasantly. Roasting fat, wet ash, stale ale, fish brine, smoke, onions, and herbs mingle in the heavy air. The scent follows workers into their clothing and hair. A cook may carry the kitchen with him even after he has crossed into a clean gallery. Among the herbs used are sage, parsley, thyme, hyssop, rosemary, and rue. Some flavour food, others are valued for health. Sage may be praised for strengthening the body, while rue is associated with protection against poison or infection. Such beliefs move easily between the kitchen and the physician's chamber. A cook is expected to understand not only taste but the supposed qualities of ingredients. Certain foods are avoided at particular hours because digestion is believed to slow during sleep. Heavy meat late at night may be blamed for troubled dreams. Cheese can be regarded with suspicion, though it remains popular. Lettuce, violets, or syrup of poppies might be considered calming, while warm spiced drinks are offered to those who cannot settle. Even now, historians continue to debate how closely palace cooking followed medical advice. Formal menus might reflect humoral theory, but hunger, habit, expense, and royal preference often prove stronger than doctrine. A monarch who desires a favourite dish is unlikely to be denied because a physician thinks it too warming. Near the pastry room, leftover crusts are stacked while pie moulds are cleaned. Tudor pies often function partly as containers, their thick outer pastry protecting the filling during cooking. The crust itself may be too hard for noble diners but useful to servants or animals afterward. Decorative pies served at court require skilled hands, and pastry cooks can hold respected positions within the kitchen hierarchy. In another corner, a brewer's servant checks barrels of ale. Drink must be supplied constantly, not only for feasting but for ordinary labour. Small ale accompanies breakfast and work, while stronger varieties are reserved for particular tables. A leaking barrel is a serious loss, and spilled drink on a stone floor soon becomes sticky beneath the rushes. Rats remain a persistent enemy. Cats are kept partly for this reason, and traps may be set near grain stores. People also use strong-smelling herbs, raised chests, and sealed containers where possible. Folk belief grants animals meanings beyond the practical. A cat behaving strangely near a doorway might be taken as an omen, though such interpretations vary from household to household. The kitchen workers themselves eat late. Their meal is simpler than what they have prepared: pottage, bread, ale, perhaps scraps of meat or fish. They sit on stools, overturned baskets, or benches scarred by knives. Conversation is low now. The urgency of service has passed, leaving tiredness in its place. One worker rubs a burned wrist with grease or an herbal salve, another wraps a cut finger in a linen. Burns, falls, and knife wounds are ordinary hazards, and remedies are often immediate rather than sophisticated. Honey may be applied to wounds. Plantain leaves, comfrey, or animal fat can be used in household treatments. Some remedies help, others merely comfort. Beyond the kitchen walls, the palace has grown quieter. Rainwater still drips into the courtyard, but the sound is slower now. A watchman crosses beneath an arch carrying a lantern. Somewhere above, a door closes softly in the privy lodgings. Inside, the final cauldron is moved away from the hottest coals. Ashes spread over part of the fire to preserve warmth until morning. Tools are hung upon hooks, knives are counted, the floor is swept, though grease and soot never entirely surrender. The workers leave in ones and twos, carrying tallow candles through narrow passages toward pallets and shared rooms. A few remain to guard the stores and tend the fires. Behind them, the kitchen settles into a deep red glow, filled with cooling iron, hanging herbs, and the faint scent of tomorrow's bread. Above, the royal household may imagine supper has ended. Below, its remains have been sorted, scrubbed, saved, and transformed by unseen hands. And while the last kitchen fire murmurs beneath its covering of ash, guards at the gates begin the more serious work of securing the palace for the night. At the outer edges of the palace, the work of closing the night becomes more deliberate. The last kitchen servants have crossed the courtyards. The supper vessels have been counted, and the warmest rooms have drawn their occupants inward. Now the watch belongs to porters, guards, ushers, and trusted officers whose duty is to make certain that every gate, stair, landing, and private door is secured. The main gate is closed with a weight that can be felt through the stone around it. Great oak leaves swing inward upon iron hinges, and the sound travels beneath the arch before fading into the darkness of the courtyard. Heavy bars are lowered into sockets. Bolts are tested by hand. A guard holds a lantern close to the lock while another checks the smaller wicket door through which an approved messenger might still be admitted. The keys themselves matter greatly. In a large palace there may be dozens, perhaps hundreds, each belonging to a storehouse, wardrobe, chapel, chest, garden gate, passage, stair, or private chamber. Some are carried on iron rings large enough to make walking noisy. Others remain in the possession of senior officers. A missing key can mean carelessness, theft, or something more troubling. No one can quite agree how perfectly such systems worked in every Tudor residence. Household ordinances describe careful routines, but old buildings resist order. Doors swell in damp weather. Locks rust. Servants borrow keys and forget to return them. A passage closed in one reign may be reopened in another. Palaces grow through additions, and their plans can become so complicated that even long-serving attendants occasionally take the wrong stair. At the gatehouse, the clerk records late arrivals. A rider approaching after curfew must identify himself and explain his business. He may carry a royal warrant, a sealed packet, or a verbal message from a noble household. Without proof, he might be directed to an inn beyond the walls until morning. This is not always a comfortable prospect. Roads near the palace are muddy, especially after rain, and inns can be crowded with servants, merchants, soldiers, and petitioners. A traveller may prefer a cold bench inside the gatehouse to a straw mattress shared with strangers. Yet royal security takes precedence over personal inconvenience. The palace fears intrusion, but it also fears disorder from within. Servants are warned not to wander without cause. Courtiers who move through restricted corridors may be challenged by guards. Some doors are guarded not because they lead directly to the monarch, but because they open into a chain of rooms that eventually does. Access is controlled in layers. At the entrance to the more private apartments, an usher keeps watch beside a candle or small brazier. He knows the faces of those permitted to pass. Rank alone may not be enough. A powerful noble can still be denied entry if the monarch has withdrawn, or if a chamber officer has given instructions that no one is to be admitted. The language of refusal is usually careful. Courtly men understand that a closed door can be a political message. A servant may say that the king is at prayer, that the queen has retired, or that the chamber is not receiving visitors. Those words can hide fatigue, illness, private conversation, or simple preference, At court, even a locked door can inspire rumour. Farther away, watchmen patrol the outer yards. They carry lanterns shielded against the wind, along with staffs, bills, or swords depending upon their office. Their pace is unhurried. The purpose is not only to find danger, but to make their presence known. The regular glow of a lantern crossing a courtyard warns would-be thieves that the palace is awake. They inspect stables, storerooms, garden walls, and river landings. A palace beside the Thames has another boundary to defend. Boats can approach quietly after dark, especially when mist lies over the water. Stairs leading down to the river may be chained or guarded. Barges belonging to the royal household are secured, and watermen are expected to remain where they can be summoned. The river carries sound differently at night. An oar striking the surface may be heard before the boat itself appears. Voices drift beneath bridges. Dogs bark from distant banks. Some chroniclers claim that smugglers, spies, or secret visitors occasionally used waterside entrances, though such stories are often difficult to separate from later imagination. Fire remains the most immediate danger. Guards look for sparks in roofs, smoke in galleries, and candles left too near hangings. Buckets of leather or wood may be kept ready, along with hooks used to pull down burning material. Water is stored where possible, but fighting a serious fire in a timber-frame palace would be terrifyingly difficult. The precautions are simple because there is little else to rely upon. A night watchman must notice the smell of smoke before flames spread behind panelling or beneath a roof. Servants are instructed to cover hearths, snuff unnecessary candles, and avoid carrying uncovered lights through crowded sleeping rooms. Some households use candle curfews, requiring most lights to be extinguished after a certain hour unless special permission has been granted. The word curfew itself comes from the idea of covering the fire. Coals are banked beneath ash or protected under a metal cover so that they remain safe while preserving enough warmth to be revived in the morning. In poorer cottages beyond the palace walls, the same practice is followed on a smaller scale. A family gathers near a single hearth, then covers the embers before sleeping beneath wool blankets. In the palace, however, dozens of fires and hundreds of candles must be managed, and one careless flame can threaten rooms filled with wood, cloth, paper, and dried rushes. The watchmen also listen for suspicious noises. A falling shutter, a horse striking its stall, or a loose sign moving in the wind may sound alarming in darkness. The palace contains so many hidden spaces that noises can travel in strange ways. Water pipes knock, roof timbers settle, rats scratch behind walls. A door that appears to open by itself may be pushed by a draught from an unseen passage. People do not always explain such sounds naturally. A sudden knock in an empty gallery might be interpreted as an omen. A dog howling without visible cause could be taken as a warning of death. Protective marks are sometimes scratched near doors or fireplaces circles, crosses, interlocking lines, or so-called daisy wheels believed to confuse harmful spirits. Historians continue to debate how consciously such marks were regarded as magical. Some may have been devotional, decorative, or simply habitual, yet they reveal a world in which physical and spiritual protection often overlap. Iron locks keep out thieves, while crosses and charms are hoped to deter less visible dangers. The night grows colder. Wind moves along the roofline and presses softly against shutters. A guard pauses beneath an arch and warms his fingers around a cup of ale. Another adjusts a wool cloak lined with cheaper fur. The light from his lantern catches the wet stones, then disappears as he turns into a covered passage. From somewhere beyond the walls comes the faint tolling of a church bell. It marks an hour when most villagers are already asleep. The sound crosses fields silvered by mist, passes roadside shrines and bare winter hedges, and reaches the palace softened by distance. Inside, the final rounds continue. A door to the plate room is checked. The chapel entrance is closed but not entirely dark. A servant confirms that a stair leading toward the royal lodgings is guarded. The gatehouse clerk dries his ink with sand and closes the register. Gradually, the palace becomes a series of secured circles. The outer gates hold the world at a distance. Inner doors separate servants from courtiers. Guarded chambers protect those closest to the crown. At the centre lies the monarch's private space, not yet asleep, but increasingly removed from the wider household. The guards settle into their watches. Some will remain awake until relieved. Others will doze upon benches, boots still on, weapons within reach. Above them, candles continue to glow in the chapel and privy rooms, where the court now turns toward prayer, protection, and the quieter fears that emerge after dark. Beyond the guarded doors, the palace chapel remains one of the few places where light is expected to endure into the night. Its candles do not burn for comfort alone. They stand before painted saints, carved images, and the altar itself, small flames offered as signs of devotion in a world where darkness is never understood as merely the absence of day. The chapel is quieter now than it was during formal service. Earlier, priests, choristers, officers, and members of the household may have gathered beneath the vaulted roof while incense drifted upward and Latin prayers echoed against stone. By this hour, only a few remain. A chaplain closes a book upon its wooden stand. A server trims a wick. Somewhere behind a screen, a priest finishes a final prayer for the monarch's health. Evening devotion follows patterns inherited from monasteries and older courts. The canonical hours divide sacred time, and although the palace does not always observe them with the strict rhythm of an abbey, bells still remind the household that night belongs to God as surely as morning does. Compline, the final service of the day, is shaped by thoughts of sleep, danger, forgiveness, and protection until dawn. For some, attendance is a sincere spiritual need. For others, part of courtly duty. A queen may request prayers for pregnancy, illness, or political peace, while servants kneel because those around them kneel. The floor beneath the worshippers may be stone, tile, or covered by worn mats. Kneeling is uncomfortable, especially in winter. Fur-lined cloaks remain wrapped around shoulders, and hands disappear into sleeves between responses. Beeswax candles give a clear golden light, but the corners remain dim, where painted figures seem to emerge and withdraw as flames move. Relics may be kept within containers of silver, gold, ivory, or crystal, a fragment believed to come from a saint's bone. Clothing or personal object can draw deep reverence. Such relics are thought to carry holy presence and to offer intercession against illness, difficult childbirth, sudden death, and the uncertainties of court life. No one can quite agree how often every royal relic was displayed. Inventories record precious objects, but not how ordinary people experienced them. Some appeared only on feast days, others were carried near the sick. A small reliquary might be brought to a royal bedside. A priest could bless water, candles, or linen. The person receiving them may trust in both prayer and medicine, seeing no contradiction between a physician's remedy and a saint's aid. In Tudor life, physical and spiritual care often exist together. Blessed candles hold particular meaning. One consecrated at Candlemas may be kept for storms, illness, childbirth, or the final hours of life. Its flame is believed to offer comfort and sacred protection. In a palace where ordinary candles are counted as household expenses, a blessed candle belongs to a different economy, measured not in wax but in hope. Servants also carry private objects of devotion. A rosary may hang from a belt. A pilgrim badge, acquired at a shrine, might be sewn to a hat or kept inside a chest. These inexpensive badges are cast from lead alloy and shaped to represent saints or holy places. They mark journeys to Canterbury, Walsingham, or other shrines. A palace servant from a distant village might touch such a badge before sleeping. Perhaps it reminds him of muddy tracks between hedges, monastery bells heard at dawn, and bread shared beside a roadside shrine. In the crowded palace, a small object can carry the memory of home. Not every protective practice fits neatly within official teaching. Written charms containing sacred names, crosses, or fragments of prayer may be folded and worn close to the body. A scrap of parchment might be placed above a doorway. Rosemary, rue, or vervain may be hung near beds for healing and protection. Church authorities sometimes condemn charms as superstition, especially when strange symbols or older folk practices are involved. Yet the border between prayer and magic is not always clear to those using them. A phrase from scripture written on parchment can seem as natural a defense as a lock upon a chest. Historians continue to debate whether protective marks and amulets reveal resistance to the church or simply a flexible religious world in which sacred power is expected to touch daily life. The fear of sudden death gives these customs urgency. To die without confession is deeply troubling. Night, therefore, becomes a time for examining the conscience. A courtier may whisper a final prayer before entering bed. A servant may cross himself beneath a coarse wool blanket. A guard beginning his watch may ask St. Michael to defend him from enemies seen and unseen. Some keep holy water nearby. It may be sprinkled in a chamber after illness or disturbing dreams. A priest might bless a room where someone believes a harmful presence has been felt. The cause may be ordinary: a rat in the wall, wind beneath the door, fever beginning in the body, but the response belongs to a world alive with spiritual meaning. Dreams themselves are treated cautiously. They may be dismissed as the result of heavy food, unbalanced humours, or an overheated chamber. Yet they can also be interpreted as warnings or messages. A dream of falling, blood, fire, or a dead relative might trouble the sleeper long after waking. Books of dream interpretation circulate, though meanings are more often exchanged through conversation. An older nurse or confessor may advise prayer, alms, avoiding a journey, or simply eating less cheese before bed. From the chapel, the last worshippers begin to withdraw. Their shoes make soft sounds upon the floor. A chaplain extinguishes several candles but leaves one burning near the altar. The scent of incense lingers among cold stones and carved wood. Outside, moonlight has broken through the thinning clouds. It lies pale across the courtyard and touches the upper windows, while watchfires glow below. Beyond the walls, mist moves over winter fields, and a distant abbey bell carries through the darkness with a measured, sleepy calm. The palace is protected by walls, guards, keys, and iron bolts, yet those within know that none of these can keep out sickness, dreams, guilt, or death. For such dangers, they turn to prayers murmured in Latin and English, to saints whose names have crossed generations, to blessed wax, holy water, relics, and small worn tokens carried close to the heart. One by one, the chapel doors are drawn nearly shut. The sacred light remains behind them, steady and quiet. In the chambers beyond, the court gathers in smaller circles, where cards, music, stories, and guarded conversation will soften the remaining hours before bed. Beyond the chapel, the court does not move immediately towards sleep. In the more private chambers, evening becomes a quieter continuation of public life, softened by candlelight but still shaped by rank, attention, and caution. The great hall may be emptying, yet the most privileged members of the household remain awake near the monarch, passing the remaining hours with music, cards, conversation, and carefully chosen amusements. These rooms are smaller than the ceremonial halls and therefore easier to warm. Fires burn behind iron grates, sending light across carved panelling and embroidered hangings. Cushions are placed upon stools and window seats. A thick carpet may cover part of the floor, while fresh rushes remain beneath benches and tables. The air carries beeswax, wood smoke, perfume, warm wine, and the faint scent of damp clothing drying near the hearth. Only selected companions are permitted here. To enter the privy chambers is to move closer to the centre of royal influence. A gentleman or lady admitted for the evening can observe the monarch in a less formal mood, although nothing at court is ever entirely private. A laugh, a whispered exchange, or an invitation to sit nearby may be remembered and repeated by morning. Cards are among the most common entertainments. Decks are painted or printed with suits whose designs vary according to origin. English players may recognise hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades, though imported cards can follow other patterns. Games are played for pleasure, but often also for money, rings, gloves, ribbons, or small favours. Gambling is officially restricted at various times, particularly among servants and apprentices, yet courtly households rarely abandon it completely. Regulations tend to distinguish between approved recreation and disorderly play, though the difference can depend upon who is holding the cards. A nobleman losing several coins beside the monarch may call it amusement. A servant doing the same in a passage might be punished. No one can quite agree how much money changed hands during ordinary palace evenings. Account books preserve some losses and payments, but private wagers leave little trace. Chroniclers sometimes describe royal gambling with disapproval, especially when the sums seem extravagant, though their moral concern may tell as much about the writer as about the game. Tables are lit by clustered candles. Players lean close enough to see painted faces and worn edges. Fingers stained by rings and ink move cards across cloth. Behind them, servants replenish wine and remove empty cups. A page may stand silently for an hour, waiting for a command that never comes. Dice are also popular. They are made from bone, ivory, wood, or other materials and carried in small boxes or leather purses, the sound of dice striking a tabletop is sharp in an otherwise quiet chamber. Some players blow upon them for luck, others mutter a saint's name or avoid certain throws believed to be unlucky. Authorities have long associated dice with temptation, fraud, and quarrels. Loaded dice are known, and accusations of cheating can damage reputations. Yet the games remain irresistible because they compress uncertainty into a few small objects. For courtiers accustomed to waiting upon royal favour, perhaps chance feels strangely familiar. Music offers a gentler diversion. A lutenist sits near the fire and tunes each string carefully. The instrument's pear-shaped body catches a small crescent of candlelight. A viol player may join, or a singer performs a song of love, loyalty, separation, or the turning seasons. The music is not always solemn. Courtly songs can be playful, romantic, or filled with riddles. Some contain political meanings understood only by those familiar with recent events. A familiar melody might carry new words, allowing a singer to praise one noble family while quietly mocking another. The monarch may perform as well as listen. Tudor rulers are expected to demonstrate refinement through music, languages, riding, dancing, hunting, and conversation. Skill in these arts reinforces authority by suggesting discipline and education. A poor performance is therefore praised politely, while a fine one may inspire admiration that is partly genuine and partly prudent. Dancing sometimes continues after supper, though space and company determine its form. In a larger chamber, couples move through measured steps while musicians play. Clothing makes every gesture visible. Sleeves, jewels, fur trim, and heavy skirts sway beneath the lights. The dance displays composure more than speed, and knowing when to bow matters as much as knowing where to place the feet. Dance manuals describe formal patterns, but everyday performance must have varied. Even now, historians continue to debate precisely how some Tudor dances were executed. Written instructions assume knowledge that has since disappeared, leaving modern interpreters to reconstruct steps from fragments. When dancing ends, stools are drawn closer to the fire, stories circulate. Someone recalls a strange incident on a hunting road, a pilgrim's vision, or a ghost said to appear near an old manor house. Such tales are not necessarily told with complete belief. They are shared because darkness makes them pleasing, and because the palace itself is old enough to contain unexplained noises. A nurse or older courtier may repeat the story of a candle extinguished before a death, a raven seen upon a roof, or a portrait that seemed to change expression. Listeners cross themselves, laugh softly, or claim not to be troubled. Few are eager to walk alone afterward through an unlit gallery. Other conversations are more practical. News arrives from market towns, monasteries and ports, and noble estates. A gentleman speaks of flooding along a pilgrimage road. A lady reports that wool prices have risen. A chaplain mentions a village dispute over church lands. These details pass through the palace not as formal reports, but as fragments gathered around the fire. Political conversation is more guarded. A courtier may praise a royal decision without naming those who opposed it. Another might ask whether a visiting ambassador appeared satisfied at supper. Silence can be as meaningful as speech. Those who live near power learn to observe pauses, glances, and changes of subject. The most experienced companions know how to entertain without exhausting the monarch. They tell a story that is amusing but not coarse, offer an opinion without seeming argumentative, and withdraw before their presence becomes burdensome. Courtly success often depends upon such small judgments. A servant may bring hippocras, wine flavoured with sugar and spices and strained through cloth. It is warming and expensive, suitable for a cold evening. Others drink ale or plain wine. Sweetmeats, wafers, dried fruit, or comfits may be offered in small quantities, though a physician might warn that late eating disturbs sleep. The medical belief is familiar food must digest properly before the body can rest. Heavy supper, excessive wine, or strong emotion may produce troubling dreams. Some people therefore walk briefly through a gallery after eating, while others sit upright beside the fire and wait for the stomach to settle. Outside the chamber, corridors have grown darker, tallow candles burn lower in wall brackets. A servant passes carrying a long snuffer, extinguishing lights no longer needed. Beyond the shuttered windows, wind moves through the gardens and bends bare branches over wet paths. A distant bell marks another hour. The sound enters faintly through walls and chimneys. settling beneath the music like a reminder that the night is advancing. In villages beyond the palace, hearths have been covered and families sleep close together. On the roads, only watchmen, messengers, and lost travellers remain awake. Within the privy rooms, the final game draws to an end. Coins are gathered, dice return to their box. The lute falls silent, its last note fading among tapestries and carved beams. Servants begin removing cups, folding cloths, and carrying stools aside. Conversation lowers naturally. One guest bows and withdraws, another waits to be dismissed. The monarch's closest attendants remain. For the evening is moving toward its most private ceremony, the preparation of the royal body, chamber, and bed for the uncertain hours of sleep. The royal bedchamber lies beyond the rooms where music and cards have faded. It is not simply a place for sleep. It is a guarded chamber, a stage for ceremony, and one of the most intimate centres of political life. Every object within it, from the bed curtains to the warming pan, reflects wealth, rank, and the monarch's need for protection. Before the sovereign enters, attendants prepare the room. Candles are renewed, though not so many that the chamber becomes uncomfortably bright. A fire is stirred behind the grate, and additional wood may be placed nearby for the night. Shutters are checked against draughts. Curtains are drawn across windows and around the bed, creating layers of warmth within walls that remain cold even in a royal residence. The bed itself dominates the chamber. Its carved wooden frame may rise high beneath a canopy embroidered with royal symbols, religious emblems, or heraldic devices. Heavy curtains hang from the tester overhead and can be closed around the sleeper. They preserve warmth and offer privacy, but they also restrict the movement of air. In winter, this enclosure is comforting. In summer, it can become close and stifling. A thick mattress rests upon ropes or wooden supports. It may be filled with wool, flock, or feathers, depending upon quality. Several smaller mattresses can be layered to create softness, followed by linen sheets, blankets, and a rich counterpane. Fur may be added during the coldest months, even in the royal chamber. However, bedding must be aired, shaken, brushed, and examined for pests. Fleas and bedbugs do not respect rank. Servants inspect seams, joints, and folds where insects may hide. Strong-smelling herbs such as lavender, rosemary, tansy, or wormwood may be placed among the bedding in the hope of repelling them. No one can quite agree how effective these preparations were, but their scents must have offered some reassurance. The sheets may be warmed before the monarch lies down. A long-handled warming pan, usually made of metal, is filled with hot coals and passed carefully between the layers of linen. This task requires attention. A coal escaping through an imperfect lid can scorch fabric or start a fire, while too much smoke leaves the bed smelling of ash. Some attendants use warmed bricks or stones wrapped in cloth. Others place hot water near the feet, though vessels can leak. The purpose is simple: to remove the deep chill from bedding in a palace where stone walls hold winter cold long after the fires are lit. Nearby, nightclothes are prepared. Linen garments are preferred because they can be washed more easily than wool or silk. The monarch may change into a loose nightshirt or shift, while heavier robes remain ready for use if the chamber must be left suddenly. Slippers, a fur-lined gown, and a cap are placed within reach. The ceremony of undressing depends upon the ruler, the court, and the moment. Some monarchs prefer a small circle of trusted attendants, others permit a more formal gathering. Access to the royal body is a privilege, carefully distributed among officers of the chamber. To help remove a gown, receive a garment, or present a nightcap may appear a humble task. Yet, at court, it represents unusual closeness. Those admitted must understand the choreography. One attendant receives jewellery, another folds garments, a third brings water for washing. Valuable clothes are not left casually upon chairs. They are counted, brushed, and carried to the wardrobe or placed in chests where they can be guarded. Jewels require particular care. Rings, chains, brooches, and pendants are removed and placed in locked boxes or entrusted to a responsible officer. Some objects carry meaning beyond their material value. A ring may seal documents, a pendant may contain a relic, a jewel can represent a diplomatic gift, a family bond, or a promise of favour. The monarch washes before bed, though not by entering a full bath. Hands and face may be cleaned with warmed water and linen cloths. The mouth can be rinsed with water, wine, or an herbal preparation. Teeth might be rubbed with cloth, salt, herbs, powdered roots, or mixtures containing substances that modern people would find unpleasant. Sweet breath is valued at court. Cloves, aniseed, cinnamon, or sugared comfits may be chewed after supper. A small container of perfume or pomander might be kept nearby. The pomander, often made of precious metal and divided into compartments, can hold ambergris, musk, rose, civet, spices, or aromatic pastes believed to sweeten the air and protect against disease. People commonly fear that sickness travels through corrupted or foul-smelling air. A pleasant scent is therefore not merely luxurious, it can seem medicinal. During times of epidemic, herbs may be burned, rooms fumigated, and windows opened or closed according to conflicting advice. Historians continue to debate how often such measures were used in ordinary royal evenings rather than moments of illness. Yet the chamber's atmosphere certainly mattered. Smoke, dampness, blocked chimneys, crowded bodies, and chamber pots all affected the air, even in rooms hung with velvet and gold. Before sleep, the monarch may drink a final cup. Warm ale, wine, or a spiced beverage can be offered, sometimes accompanied by a small piece of bread, preserved fruit, or a medicinal preparation. Physicians may advise against excess, but royal preferences are difficult to govern. If sleep has been troublesome, a remedy might be prepared from lettuce, violet syrup, chamomile, poppy, nutmeg, or other ingredients believed to calm the body. Such mixtures vary greatly. Some are gentle, others contain substances capable of causing confusion, dangerous weakness, or a sleep deeper than intended. Prayer follows or accompanies these preparations. The monarch may kneel at a prie-dieu, a small prayer desk placed near the bed. A book of hours, illuminated with scenes of saints and the Virgin, may be opened by candlelight. A chaplain can attend, though private prayers may be spoken without witnesses. The fear of dying during sleep is not remote. Sudden death is spiritually alarming because it may leave no time for confession or final rites. A prayer for protection through the night becomes a practical act of faith. The sign of the cross is made. A saint is invoked. A blessed object may be kept beneath a pillow or near the bed. Protective symbols can also be worked into the chamber itself. Crosses appear in textiles, furniture, and jewellery. Certain woods, stones, or herbs are credited with guarding against nightmares, poison, or unseen harm. A piece of coral may be valued as a defence against illness. Jet crystal or toadstone could be associated with protection, though beliefs differ from one household to another. The bed curtains are inspected before they close. An attendant may look behind hangings, beneath furniture, or inside adjoining spaces. This is partly practical security. A hidden intruder in the royal chamber is a fear that court officers cannot ignore. Stories circulate of assassins concealed behind curtains or under beds, though some are likely sharpened by later retelling. The chamber doors are also checked. Access points may include a main entrance, a privy stair, a closet, and passages known only to household servants. Guards stand outside, while trusted attendants sleep close enough to hear a call. A page or groom may rest upon a pallet, bench, or truckle bed in an adjoining room. Royal privacy is therefore never complete. Even in sleep, the monarch remains surrounded. Servants listen for movement. Guards note who approaches. Physicians may be summoned if breathing changes or fever appears. A restless night can become public knowledge by breakfast. The candles are reduced one by one. A small flame remains near the bed, perhaps shielded within a lantern to reduce the danger of fire. The room darkens around it. Embroidered animals and heraldic flowers disappear into shadow. The polished surface of a chest catches the last trembling light. Outside, the wind passes over the palace roofs and through bare garden trees. A watchman's lantern crosses the courtyard below, briefly reflected in wet stone. From far beyond the walls comes the faint sound of a bell, marking an hour that most of the country sleeps through unnoticed. The monarch settles behind the curtains. An attendant lowers the fabric and withdraws carefully. Clothing has been stored, jewels locked away, prayers spoken, and the sheets warmed against the cold. The ritual offers comfort, but it cannot guarantee sleep. Beyond the chamber door, servants remain awake. Some will wait for a summons. Others begin the less visible work of collecting garments, carrying messages, clearing vessels, and moving quietly through the palace's shadowed corridors. Beyond the royal bedchamber, the palace does not become still. Its activity simply withdraws into narrower corridors, backstairs, service rooms, and dim galleries where those who support the court continue working beyond the sight of noble guests. The monarch may be settling behind embroidered curtains, but servants remain awake beneath the same roof, carrying away the remains of evening and quietly preparing for the morning to come. A chamber servant steps from the privy rooms with folded garments over one arm. The clothes worn during the evening must be brushed, examined, and stored. Mud may cling to the hem of a cloak, candle wax may have fallen upon a sleeve, a fastening may need repair before daylight. Rich fabrics cannot simply be thrown into a basket and forgotten. Velvet, silk, satin, wool, and fur each require different care, and a careless hand can ruin cloth worth more than a servant earns in years. Clothing is shaken gently and brushed with tools made from stiff hair or bristles. Spots may be treated with bread, chalk, fuller's earth, soap, or other household substances. Grease can sometimes be lifted with absorbent powder. Wine stains may inspire several competing remedies, none entirely certain. Some household books recommend salt, vinegar, milk, or plant juices, though no one can quite agree how successfully these methods worked upon delicate dyes. The garments are then carried toward the wardrobe rooms, where chests, presses, pegs, and shelves hold the monarch's clothing. These spaces are guarded because cloth itself represents wealth. A fur-lined gown can be dismantled, altered, reused, or given as a reward. Old garments often pass downward through the household rather than being discarded. A nobleman's worn coat may become a servant's prized possession, once its badges or expensive trim have been removed. In another passage, a page carries a covered cup toward a waiting gentleman. He moves slowly to prevent the drink from spilling, one hand shielding the candle flame from draughts. Pages are often boys or young men from respectable families, placed in service to learn manners, loyalty, and the habits of court. They deliver messages, stand behind chairs, assist with clothing, and wait through long periods in which nothing appears to happen. Their position is both humble and promising. A page who serves well may become a gentleman of the chamber or receive a recommendation from a powerful patron. Yet advancement depends upon patience. Much of his life consists of listening for bells, memorizing faces, and knowing when not to speak. Near a turn in the corridor, two servants pass without greeting. Silence is expected close to sleeping chambers. Shoes with softer soles are useful here, and rushes dampen footsteps upon stone or tile. Even so, a dropped key or metal cup can send a sharp noise through several rooms, followed by a pause in which everyone wonders whether the monarch has awakened. Small bells are used to summon servants. A cord beside a bed or chamber chair may connect to a bell beyond the room. Though arrangements differ between palaces, elsewhere, an attendant simply waits within hearing. The call can come at any hour: more wood for the fire, a drink, a physician, a priest, or help with a chamber pot. The servants closest to the bedchamber therefore sleep lightly. Some rest on pallets in an adjoining room, still partly dressed. A cloak becomes a blanket. Boots remain beside the mattress. Their sleep belongs partly to the person they serve. Farther away, laundresses and linen keepers sort the cloth used during supper and bedtime. Tablecloths, napkins, towels, sheets, undergarments, and night linen require constant attention. Linen is one of the palace's quiet necessities. It touches food, skin, wounds, faces, and sacred objects. Clean linen is associated with health and good order, even when full bathing is less frequent. Washing is rarely completed in the middle of the night, but sorting cannot always wait. Stained items are separated, torn edges are noted, linen may be counted before being sent to a laundry house, where it will be soaked, boiled, beaten, rinsed, and spread over hedges or grass to dry and bleach in sunlight. The work is hard upon hands and backs. Water must be heated in large vessels. Ash lye helps remove grease but can burn the skin. Soap made from fat and alkaline substances is used where available. Fragrant herbs may be added to rinsing water, particularly for fine linen, though their scent cannot entirely conceal smoke, sweat, and the dampness of drying cloth. Some linen is stored with lavender, rosemary, or dried flowers. Sweet-smelling chests are valued not only for pleasure but because certain herbs are thought to discourage moths and illness. A sprig placed between folded sheets becomes a small defense against both insects and corrupted air. Nearby, Chamber pots and washing basins are collected from rooms no longer occupied. The unpleasant work is done discreetly. Vessels are covered where possible and carried toward designated places for emptying. A servant who stumbles in a dark stair risks an indignity remembered by the household far longer than any elegant service performed at supper. Messengers continue to move through the palace as well. A folded note may pass from one chamber to another under cover of ordinary business. Some messages concern morning arrangements, hunting plans, chapel attendance, or the time a visitor is to be admitted. Others are private enough to be sealed with wax. A servant carrying such a letter may not know its contents, yet he understands its importance from the identity of the sender and the urgency of the instructions. He may also understand that curiosity is dangerous. Court life depends upon secrecy, but secrecy depends upon servants who see more than they are expected to repeat. Even now, historians continue to debate how private royal correspondence truly remained. Letters could be intercepted, copied, delayed, or described from memory. A trusted messenger might be rewarded for silence, while a disloyal one could sell information to a rival household. Along the galleries, lights are gradually reduced. A servant with a snuffer extinguishes candles that no longer serve an occupied room. Melted wax is saved where possible, and candle ends may be collected for reuse. Beeswax belongs to important spaces. Tallow is more common among workers. Its smell is stronger, and its flame smokes when the wick grows too long. The palace now lies in pools of uneven light. One doorway glows warmly while the next passage disappears into darkness. Tapestries seem to shift when air moves behind them. Wooden panels creak as the temperature falls. Rats travel more boldly beneath floors and along storeroom walls. Outside, mist gathers in the courtyards. The moon appears briefly above the roofs, pale behind thin clouds. A watchfire burns near the gate, and the guard beside it turns a log with the end of his staff. Beyond the walls, winter fields lie quiet, and the muddy road reflects a little of the sky. Within, the hidden labour continues. A maid folds linen beside a dying fire. A page waits with a message in his hand. A chamber servant places a furred gown inside a chest and turns the key. Another carries fresh water toward a room where someone has called unexpectedly. Most courtiers will never notice these movements. By morning, the candles will be replaced, the floors swept, the garments prepared, and the stains of the evening removed. The palace will appear to have restored itself during the darkness. But it is not the walls that perform this transformation. It is the quiet procession of servants passing through shadowed corridors, their tired hands carrying the royal household from one day into the next. As servants finish their last journeys through the corridors, the palace begins to reveal another side of itself, not the carefully arranged world of audiences, feasts, and royal ceremony, but a crowded sleeping place in which hundreds of people must find somewhere to lie until morning. The monarch rests within a guarded bedchamber, surrounded by heavy curtains, warm linen, and trusted attendants. Beyond that private centre, comfort diminishes gradually with rank. Great nobles may have chambers of their own, furnished with carved beds, chests, stools, and wall hangings. Lesser courtiers share rooms. Officers sleep near the places they supervise. Servants settle upon truckle beds, pallets, benches, or piles of straw wherever duty and available space permit. A Tudor palace is rarely designed to house its entire household with ease. Many residences have grown over generations, with new galleries, towers, courtyards, and apartments added around older structures. A room built as a storeroom may become temporary lodging when the court arrives. A passage can be screened off with cloth to create a sleeping space. Even halls used for ceremony by day may hold rows of pallets after the tables have been removed. No one can quite agree how crowded every palace became on an ordinary night. Surviving accounts list beds, chambers, and household members, but they do not always reveal who slept beside whom or how many people quietly found space beyond official arrangements. What is certain is that privacy, as later generations understand it, is scarce. Among nobles, sharing a chamber is not necessarily considered humiliating. Companions, relatives, attendants, and guests may sleep within the same room. A high-ranking person rarely expects to be entirely alone. Servants must be available to help with clothing, fire, illness, or a sudden summons. Presence is associated with protection as much as intrusion. The best beds contain feather mattresses covered by linen sheets and layered wool blankets. Bolsters support the head, while smaller pillows may be scented with herbs. The bed curtains are drawn to preserve heat, creating a sheltered compartment inside the larger room. In winter, the sleeper may wear a linen nightshirt, cap, stockings, or even additional clothing beneath the blankets. Farther down the household, bedding becomes simpler. A flock mattress is filled with waste wool, scraps of cloth, or other soft material. A pallet may consist of a stuffed sack laid directly upon the floor. Straw mattresses are common and must be shaken or replaced when they grow damp, flattened, or infested. Dampness is a constant discomfort. Stone floors draw cold from the earth, roofs leak, and unheated chambers hold the night air. A pallet placed too close to a wall may become wet with condensation. Servants use cloaks as extra blankets and push beds nearer to one another for warmth. Wool is essential. Thick blankets are prized because they retain heat even in a drafty room. Those fortunate enough to own a fur-lined cloak may sleep beneath it. Others tuck clothing around the edges of the mattress to block cold air. Truckle beds are pulled from beneath larger frames for attendants. During the day, they disappear, allowing the chamber to appear spacious. At night, they place a servant close enough to hear the sleeper stir. A trusted chamber attendant may spend years sleeping only a few feet from the person served. In more crowded quarters, 2 or 3 people share one bed. This is not automatically intimate in the romantic sense. Travellers share beds at inns, servants share them in households, and relatives share them at home. Warmth, expense, and lack of space make the practice ordinary. Bed sharing has its own etiquette. Sleepers arrange themselves according to age, rank, and familiarity. The more honoured place is often nearest the wall or away from the draught. Though customs vary, one should not seize the blankets, bring filthy clothes into bed, or disturb others with excessive movement. Such rules are not always obeyed. Some people sleep sitting partly upright, supported by bolsters. This may ease breathing or digestion, and images of high pillows have encouraged the belief that everyone slept upright. Historians continue to debate how widespread the practice truly was. Most sleepers probably chose whatever position brought warmth and relief after a long day. The bed is more than furniture. It is one of the most valuable objects in a household. Fine beds are listed in wills and inventories, inherited by relatives, carried between residences, or given as royal rewards. Curtains, coverings, and mattresses may be more costly than the wooden frame itself. When the court travels, important bedding moves with it. Carts carry rolled hangings, folded mattresses, chests of linen and portable furniture along muddy roads. Servants arrive ahead of the royal party to prepare chambers. Fresh rushes are laid, fires lit, and beds assembled before the monarch enters. Lesser attendants bring less. A blanket, cloak, small chest, and perhaps a personal pillow may be their entire sleeping equipment. A page newly assigned to the household might rest on a pallet beside several strangers, listening to unfamiliar breathing and footsteps in the corridor beyond. Night brings pests closer. Fleas hide within wool and straw. Bedbugs settle into cracks in wooden frames. Lice travel in clothing and hair. People comb themselves, air blankets, wash linen, and scatter herbs such as tansy, wormwood, or lavender. Bedding may be smoked or exposed to sunlight when weather allows. Some remedies are more hopeful than effective. Household advice recommends placing particular plants beneath the mattress or rubbing bed frames with strong liquids. A charm written with sacred words might be tucked near the head to guard against nightmares, though it offers little protection from insects. Dreams trouble many sleepers. A person who wakes after seeing a dead relative, a black dog, or a falling star may remember the image as an omen. Others blame dreams upon supper, fever, or stale air. An older servant might recommend prayer, a sprig of rosemary, or turning the pillow before lying down again. Within noble chambers, a small light may remain burning. Among servants, darkness is more complete. Tallow candles cost money, and unnecessary flames increase the danger of fire. Once the candle is snuffed, sleepers navigate by memory or wait for moonlight to enter through cracks around shutters. Chamber pots are placed nearby because reaching a privy through dark corridors is inconvenient and unsafe. A covered vessel beneath the bed is a small luxury. Shared sleeping rooms may have only one, creating quiet negotiations during the night. The air soon becomes heavy with breathing, wool, smoke, damp straw, and the remains of supper. Curtains trap warmth, but also stale air. A fire that seemed generous before bed may burn low within an hour, leaving the outer edges of the chamber cold. Beyond the windows, mist settles over the roofs. A distant watchman calls the hour, his voice passing across the courtyard and fading beneath the eaves. The palace appears silent from outside, yet within it hundreds of sleepers shift, whisper, cough, dream, and listen. A guard rests on a bench near the gate, his cloak wrapped tightly around him. A laundress sleeps beside folded linen. 2 pages share a narrow pallet beneath a staircase. A visiting gentleman lies beneath a borrowed blanket, wondering whether his petition will be heard in the morning. Every sleeper occupies a different place in the household, but darkness draws them temporarily into the same fragile condition. Rank determines the softness of the mattress and the warmth of the room, yet no curtain can entirely exclude cold, illness, fear, or restless dreams. And as the palace settles more deeply into sleep, the practical needs of the body remain close at hand, hidden beneath beds, behind screens, and within the covered vessels that servants will quietly remove before dawn. The covered vessels beneath the beds are among the least ceremonial objects in the palace, yet they are as necessary as candles, blankets, and keys. Royal life may be surrounded by embroidered hangings and silver plate, but after dark the body continues to make its ordinary demands. The Tudor palace therefore depends upon a hidden system of chamber pots, close stools, washing basins, privies, drains, servants, perfumes, and carefully observed habits intended to preserve both dignity and tolerable air. In the finest chambers, a close stool provides greater comfort than a simple pot. It resembles a wooden chair or chest, sometimes padded and covered with costly fabric, with an opening above a removable vessel. When closed, it may appear to be an ordinary piece of furniture. Some are portable, allowing them to follow the royal household from palace to palace with beds, chests, and tapestries. The monarch's close stool is attended by one of the most intimate officers of the household. The groom of the stool, despite the humble sound of the title, can hold remarkable influence because he serves the king in moments from which nearly everyone else is excluded. He manages access to private chambers, clothing, linen, and personal routines, and may speak with the ruler when great nobles cannot. Historians continue to debate precisely how much physical assistance the office required in every reign. Surviving regulations and accounts reveal intimacy, but daily practice changed according to the monarch's health, age, and preference. What remains clear is that proximity to the royal body could become proximity to political power. For lesser courtiers and servants, arrangements are simpler. Earthenware, pewter, wood, or metal chamber pots are placed beneath beds or behind screens. They must be emptied before the rooms become active in the morning. In crowded sleeping chambers, their use requires discretion, patience, and a willingness to ignore the presence of others. Privacy may be created by bed curtains or a folding screen. Though many servants have neither, a person turns away, lowers a voice, or waits until companions appear asleep. The embarrassment is familiar, but the practical need is accepted. In a world where people sleep, dress, eat, and work in company, bodily privacy is limited even among the wealthy. Some chambers connect to permanent privies, often called guardrobes in older buildings. These may consist of small closets built into thick walls, with seats positioned above shafts leading downward. Waste falls into pits, moats, drains, or channels outside the wall. The design seems simple, but blocked shafts, cold drafts, and unpleasant smells can make their use uncomfortable. The term garderobe is sometimes connected with the storage of clothing, perhaps because ammonia and strong odours were believed to discourage moths and other pests. No one can quite agree how common this practice truly was, and it is possible that later explanations have made the custom sound more organised than it ever was. Still, clothes and privies did sometimes occupy nearby spaces in castles and older residences. In newer Tudor palaces, attempts are made to improve drainage and water supply. Channels carry rainwater and waste away from certain buildings. Pipes may deliver water to kitchens, fountains, gardens, and selected rooms. Hampton Court, for example, becomes known for unusually elaborate water arrangements. Yet even impressive systems depend upon maintenance, and palace drains can still clog with grease, rushes, rags, and household refuse. Servants known by unflattering titles may be responsible for cleaning privies and removing waste. Night soil is carried in buckets or carts to pits, dung heaps, gardens, or places beyond the most occupied parts of the residence. Human waste can be used as fertilizer, though its handling carries obvious risks that Tudor people do not fully understand. The work usually takes place at quiet hours, when noble residents are less likely to see or smell it. A covered bucket passes down a service stair, a door into a rear yard opens briefly. Cold air enters, followed by the sound of boots on wet ground. By sunrise, the evidence should have disappeared. That disappearance is important. Cleanliness in a palace is partly the management of what must not be visible. Servants sweep floors, clear pots, remove stained rushes, and carry away ashes before the court resumes its public face. The purpose is not only health, but honour. A foul chamber suggests poor household government. Yet cleanliness does not mean sterility. Rush-covered floors collect scraps, mud, animal hair, insects, and spilled drink. Fresh layers may sometimes be placed over older material rather than every rush being removed. Contemporary critics complain of filthy floors, though such complaints may exaggerate the worst examples to make moral points about disorder. In well-managed royal apartments, rushes are changed more regularly. Herbs such as lavender, rosemary, sweetflag, meadowsweet, or mint may be scattered among them. When stepped upon, they release fragrance into the room. Their scent softens the smell of smoke, damp wool, food, bodies, and waste. Perfume serves both social and medical purposes. Sweet air is associated with health, while foul air is feared as a carrier of disease. A pomander may be held near the nose when passing an unpleasant place. Cloth soaked in vinegar or rosewater can be used to refresh the face and hands. During outbreaks of sickness, aromatic herbs may be burned in braziers or placed near doors. Theories of bad air are mistaken in important ways, yet the instinct to remove waste, improve ventilation, and avoid foul surroundings sometimes provides real protection. Unfortunately, perfumes can also create the illusion of safety where contamination remains. Washing takes place in basins rather than through frequent full immersion. A servant brings warm water in an ewer, pours it over the hands, and holds out clean linen. Faces, necks, arms, and other parts of the body can be cleaned with damp cloths. The wealthy possess more linen and therefore greater opportunity to maintain a clean appearance. Changing the linen worn next to the skin is itself considered cleansing. Shirts and shifts absorb sweat and oils, sparing costly outer garments. A person in fresh white linen may be regarded as clean, even without bathing the entire body. Laundry is therefore central to hygiene, though the hard labour is performed elsewhere by women working over steaming tubs and caustic lye. Soap is available, often made from animal fat and wood ash, though quality varies. Imported soaps scented with herbs or flowers are prized. Bran, oatmeal, almond paste, and scented waters may also be used upon the skin. Hands receive special attention because they are visible and used at meals. Nails are trimmed with small knives or scissors. Hair is combed to remove tangles and lice. Fine-toothed combs made of wood, bone, horn, or ivory pass through hair and beards. Some double-sided combs have wider teeth on one side and narrow teeth on the other, allowing grooming and the removal of parasites with the same object. Tooth care is equally varied. People rub teeth with cloth and use powders made from salt, sage, charcoal, cuttlefish bone, or other abrasives. Some recipes include honey or sugar, which improve flavour while doing little good for decay. Wealthy Tudor mouths often suffer from painful teeth, especially as sugar becomes more available at court. A toothache may be treated with clove oil, wine, herbs, prayer, or extraction. Certain remedies advise placing a charm near the jaw or invoking a saint associated with dental pain. The belief that toothache is caused by a tiny toothworm survives in parts of Europe, though learned physicians may offer humoral explanations instead. During the night, such discomfort can become unbearable. A courtier wakes with a throbbing jaw and sends for warmed wine. A servant presses cloth against a swollen gum. Another burns rosemary in the hope that its scent will freshen the chamber and clear a heavy head. Moonlight rests faintly against the shutters. Somewhere below, a bucket is emptied into a covered cart. Water runs through a stone channel, carrying ash and kitchen waste toward the darker edge of the grounds. A servant returns through a rear door, rubbing cold hands together beneath a wool cloak. By dawn, basins will contain fresh water, pots will be removed, and fragrant rushes will disguise what the night has left behind. The palace will once again present polished cups, clean linen, scented chambers, and carefully dressed bodies. But beneath that appearance lies continuous labour, and when illness enters the household, no perfume, clean shirt, or guarded privy can fully prevent the fears that begin to spread from chamber to chamber. Illness rarely enters a Tudor palace with the certainty of an announced visitor. It begins with smaller signs, a servant coughing repeatedly beside a stair, a courtier waking with fever, a child refusing food, or an attendant noticing that the monarch's face appears unusually pale in candlelight. By midnight, these details can become the centre of the household's attention, drawing physicians, nurses, chaplains, and frightened servants toward a chamber that had seemed ordinary only hours before. The first response depends upon the status of the patient. A kitchen boy may be sent to a shared room with a blanket and a cup of warm ale. A noble guest receives a fire, clean linen, and perhaps the attention of a household physician. If the monarch is unwell, the entire palace shifts around the sickbed. Doors close, messages move quietly, guards receive new instructions, while courtiers begin wondering what the illness might mean for their own futures. A Tudor physician approaches sickness through the ancient theory of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health is believed to depend upon their balance. Fever may suggest too much heat or blood. Melancholy may be associated with cold, dry black bile. Treatment seeks to restore harmony through diet, rest, purging, sweating, or bloodletting. Before prescribing a remedy, the physician examines the patient's pulse and urine. Urine is collected in a clear glass vessel known as a medulla and held toward the light. Its colour, sediment, smell, and consistency are interpreted as signs of what is happening inside the body. Medical illustrations sometimes show physicians studying these flasks with great concentration, and the image becomes so familiar that the urine bottle serves almost as a symbol of the profession. No one can quite agree how accurately every physician followed the elaborate charts preserved in medical texts. Experience, reputation, and personal habit mattered as much as formal learning. A skilled practitioner might notice dehydration, infection, or internal bleeding without understanding their true causes. Another might draw confident conclusions from changes that meant very little. Astrology may also guide treatment. The position of the moon and planets is thought to influence the body, particularly the timing of bloodletting. Medical calendars show which parts of the body are governed by particular zodiac signs. A physician may hesitate to open a vein on an astrologically unfavourable day unless the danger of waiting seems greater. Bloodletting is performed with a lancet or through the use of leeches. The amount taken depends upon the patient's age, strength, and supposed imbalance. A basin is held beneath the arm while the blood flows. The sight can be reassuring to those who believe harmful excess is leaving the body, though the treatment may weaken a patient who is already dangerously ill. Other remedies are gentler. A feverish person may receive barley water, thin broth, or a cooling drink made with violets. Warm poultices can be applied to the chest. Honey, licorice, horehound, and hyssop appear in treatments for coughs. Rosewater is used to soothe, refresh, or carry other ingredients. Herbal knowledge does not belong to physicians alone. Nurses, apothecaries, cooks, midwives, and experienced household women all prepare remedies. A still room within a great residence contains jars, bottles, dried plants, mortars, linen strainers, and small furnaces for heating mixtures. Here, herbs from palace gardens are turned into syrups, waters, salves, and cordials. Rosemary is associated with memory and strength. Lavender may calm the head and sweeten linen. Comfrey is applied to bruises or broken bones, earning names that suggest its power to knit the body together. Plantain leaves are placed upon wounds, while willow bark may reduce pain and fever, though Tudor healers do not understand the chemistry behind its effect. Some medicines are far more complicated. Recipes may combine dozens of substances, spices, roots, wine, honey, animal parts, precious stones, or powdered minerals. Theriac, an ancient compound valued as an antidote to poison and disease, can contain many ingredients and must be prepared with care. Its expense adds to its reputation. The fear of poison is especially strong near the royal court. Sudden vomiting, stomach pain, weakness, or confusion may lead people to suspect deliberate harm. A bezoar stone taken from the digestive system of an animal can be prized as an antidote. Coral, unicorn horn, usually another material sold under that name, and certain gemstones are believed to reveal or resist poison. Historians continue to debate how deeply educated courtiers trusted such objects. Skepticism existed, but so did caution. In an age without reliable tests, an expensive charm may seem no less reasonable than a physician who studies the stars before opening a vein. If sickness appears contagious, fear spreads quickly. Tudor people know that illness can pass through households, even though they do not understand microbes. They blame corrupted air, contact, clothing, or divine judgment. Rooms may be fumigated with juniper, rosemary, frankincense, or vinegar. Fires are increased to cleanse the air. Bedding may be burned if the threat seems serious. Those suspected of plague are isolated where possible. Red crosses and written warnings are more familiar in towns during later outbreaks. But royal households also attempt to avoid infected districts, people, and goods. The court can move rapidly from one palace to another, carrying beds, records, plate, and anxiety along the roads. Flight offers only uncertain protection. Servants, carts, messengers, and food suppliers connect the palace to nearby villages and markets. A stable hand may have family in an affected parish. A laundress may receive linen from a sick chamber. A flea hidden in a blanket can cross guarded gates more easily than any assassin. At the bedside, religion remains inseparable from treatment. A chaplain hears confession or recites prayers. Holy water may be sprinkled. A relic is placed nearby. If death appears close, the patient receives the final rites, while attendants light blessed candles and kneel. Midnight magnifies every symptom. A cough sounds harsher behind closed curtains. Fever makes familiar tapestries seem to move. A person drifting between sleep and waking may speak to figures no one else can see. Such visions can be blamed upon illness, medicine, troubled humours, or the approach of the spiritual world. Outside the chamber, servants whisper. Rumour travels before diagnosis. One says the patient ate spoiled fish. Another remembers an owl calling near the roof. A third insists that the illness began after a stranger entered the chapel. Those who recorded palace life rarely captured these quiet explanations, yet such beliefs belong to the ordinary experience of sickness. Beyond the windows, wind moves over the dark gardens. Rain has begun again, falling softly upon lead roofs and stone courtyards. A watchman passes beneath the sick room with his lantern lowered, unaware that above him a physician is counting a pulse beside a wavering candle. The patient is given fresh linen. A nurse adjusts the blankets and places a warm brick near cold feet. A bowl of broth waits untouched upon a stool. Herbs smoulder in a brazier, filling the room with a sharp, resinous scent. For the moment, nothing more can be done. The physician offers cautious reassurance. The chaplain continues praying. Servants settle into chairs and pallets, prepared to wake at the slightest movement. And throughout the palace, behind guarded doors and heavy bed curtains, people listen to the rain and wonder whether morning will bring recovery. Morning, or another secret to be carried quietly through the court. While the physician remains beside the sickbed and rain whispers across the palace roofs, other doors stay closed for reasons having little to do with illness. Night offers secrecy that daylight rarely allows. The court is still watched, but shadows soften movement. Servants become easier to overlook, and conversations too dangerous for a public gallery can be held beside a private fire. A chamber door may be guarded by nothing more than a trusted servant seated upon a stool. He appears half asleep, his cloak drawn around his shoulders, yet he notices every person approaching. Those permitted to enter give a name, a quiet word, or a familiar signal. Others are told that the occupant has retired, is praying, or cannot receive visitors. Behind the door, perhaps 3 or 4 people sit near a low fire. The chamber is warmer than the corridor, and heavy curtains have been drawn to prevent both draughts and curious eyes. A small table holds wine, bread, sealing wax, and folded papers. The conversation remains quiet enough that the crackling logs sometimes seem louder than the speakers. Some meetings concern royal policy. A councillor may explain news received from an ambassador, a border captain, or a noble household. A letter from abroad might report the mood of another court. A messenger from a port could describe unusual ships, delayed cargoes, or rumours carried by merchants. Such information arrives in fragments, and decisions are often made before anyone possesses the full truth. No one can quite agree how many important Tudor decisions were shaped during these informal nighttime conversations. Official records preserve proclamations, council minutes, and sealed letters, but they rarely capture the hesitant words spoken beside a bedchamber fire. A suggestion offered privately may later appear as a settled policy, stripped of the uncertainty that accompanied its birth. Other meetings concern patronage. A courtier hopes to secure an office for a cousin. A widow seeks protection in a dispute over land. A gentleman asks that his son be placed within the royal household. Favours are requested through layers of friendship, obligation, and kinship. An evening provides an opportunity to speak without the formal pressure of an audience chamber. Gifts may accompany these requests. A small jewel, a fine pair of gloves, a hunting dog, an illuminated book, or a basket of rare fruit can express loyalty while gently reminding the recipient of the giver's hopes. The boundary between generosity and influence is understood but seldom stated directly. Letters are central to this hidden world. A secretary writes at a narrow desk, sharpening a quill with a small knife before dipping it into ink. Sand is scattered over the finished lines to dry them. The paper is folded inward, tied or closed with wax, and impressed with a seal. A broken seal reveals that a letter has been opened, but it does not guarantee privacy. Servants can be bribed. Messengers can be delayed. Skilled secretaries may copy documents before sending them onward. Some letters are written in cipher, replacing names and words with symbols or numbers. Others use vague phrases whose meanings are known only to sender and receiver. Historians continue to debate how secure these ciphers truly were. Many were simple enough to be broken by an experienced reader, especially if the same symbols appeared repeatedly. Yet the use of code could slow an enemy and remind the messenger that the contents were dangerous. A letter may leave the palace through a rear gate before dawn. The rider carries it inside a leather pouch beneath his cloak, along with money, food, and perhaps a written warrant granting fresh horses along the road. He will travel through wet villages, dark forests, and toll gates where strangers ask his destination. Roadside inns provide food and shelter, but also risk. A messenger's horse, clothing, and urgency attract attention. He may claim to be carrying ordinary household business. If the letter is especially important, its contents might be memorized and the paper destroyed, though memory brings its own dangers. Not every hidden message is political. Romantic arrangements also pass through the palace after dark. A lady's maid may deliver a ribbon, a poem, or a brief note folded small enough to conceal within a sleeve. A gentleman might wait near a chapel passage or garden stair where respectable excuses can be invented if someone appears. Courtship is governed by family interest, reputation, property, and rank. Yet affection does not always obey these arrangements. Secret promises can be exchanged, though a private agreement may carry serious consequences. Marriage without proper family approval can damage alliances and provoke royal anger, especially when those involved belong to important households. The custom of hand-fasting creates further uncertainty. Words of consent spoken in the present tense may be regarded as binding, even without a grand church ceremony, though legal and religious practice develops over time. A couple who exchange promises secretly may later disagree about what was said, leaving servants, friends, or letters as witnesses. Such secrecy is risky because palace walls seem to listen. A laundress notices unfamiliar perfume on a handkerchief. A page sees a gentleman leaving the wrong stair. A groom is asked to prepare a horse at an unusual hour. Information gathers among those who are expected to remain silent. Servants possess little formal power, but knowledge gives them a quieter form of influence. A chambermaid may know which noble sleeps badly, which lady receives letters, and which counsellor drinks more wine than he admits. Most keep such knowledge private because their livelihoods depend upon discretion. Others trade it carefully for protection or reward. Rumour moves through kitchens, laundries, guardrooms, and stables before reaching the formal court. It changes as it travels. A brief conversation becomes a secret pact. A gift becomes a bribe. A delayed visitor becomes a prisoner. By morning, the same story may exist in several versions, none entirely false and none entirely reliable. Spies exploit this atmosphere. Foreign ambassadors employ informants, while noble factions watch one another. A musician, translator, merchant, or household servant may be useful because such people move between rooms and social groups. Their ordinary duties allow them to hear what a uniformed guard never could. Yet suspicion can be as dangerous as genuine espionage. An innocent servant carrying a folded cloth may be accused of concealing a message. A visitor who takes the wrong corridor might be questioned for hours. Fear encourages people to interpret chance meetings as plots. Protective habits arise around documents and conversation. Papers are burned after reading, names are replaced with titles or nicknames. Sensitive matters are discussed while walking in gardens, where hidden listeners seem less likely, though hedges and covered walks provide their own concealment. At night, a brazier becomes a convenient place to destroy evidence. Wax softens, paper curls, and ink disappears into flame. The ashes are stirred until no readable fragment remains. The act is simple, but the smell of scorched parchment may linger in the room after the speakers have gone. Beyond the shutters, the rain begins to weaken. Clouds thin above the dark roofs, and a pale moonlight spreads across the inner courtyard. A watchman pauses beside a stone arch, listening to water drip from the gutters. Somewhere far away, a monastery bell marks the deep night, its sound passing over sleeping fields and empty roads. Within one chamber, a final letter receives its seal. In another, two courtiers agree to speak again after chapel. A lady's maid hides a folded note beneath clean linen. A secretary locks his papers inside an oak chest and keeps the key upon a cord beneath his shirt. The doors open briefly, then close. Visitors depart separately to avoid notice. Servants extinguish candles and smooth the rushes where chairs have stood. By morning, the rooms will show little evidence of what has occurred. The palace sleeps around these secrets, though not peacefully. Every whispered promise, political warning, romantic message, and concealed alliance waits for daylight, when some will vanish without consequence, and others will begin altering lives far beyond the walls. The final visitors have scarcely returned to their chambers when a sudden noise crosses the palace courtyard. It is not yet loud enough to be called an alarm. A wooden shutter strikes stone somewhere above the covered walk, followed by the startled barking of a dog near the kitchens. For several moments, the night watch listens. Most nighttime disturbances prove harmless. Wind loosens a latch. A horse kicks against a stall. Roof timbers contract in the cold. Yet guards cannot assume that every strange sound belongs to the weather, especially in a palace crowded with fire, valuable objects, political enemies, and sleeping people. A watchman lifts his lantern and crosses the wet stones. Another remains near the gate, holding his bill upright beneath the arch. Their shadows move across the walls in long, uneven shapes. The shutter strikes again, and this time a servant leaning from a nearby doorway calls down that the fastening has broken. The matter is simple, but it must still be corrected. A ladder is fetched. The shutter is tied closed until a carpenter can repair it in daylight. The guards return to their posts, though their senses remain sharpened. Once the quiet of a palace has been disturbed, every later sound seems to carry greater meaning. Fire is the danger they fear most. Flames are necessary everywhere in kitchens, chambers, guardrooms, laundries, offices, and chapels. Candles stand near curtains. Coals smoulder beneath warming pans. Sparks rise through chimneys lined with soot. A servant who falls asleep beside an uncovered light can endanger an entire range of buildings. The first sign may be smell rather than flame. Smoke drifting from the wrong roofline causes an immediate response. Watchmen call to one another. Doors are opened. Servants are awakened and sent to discover whether a hearth has been left uncovered or a beam has begun to burn. Buckets stand ready in several parts of the palace, though their placement differs from one residence to another. Leather vessels can be passed from hand to hand in a line stretching from a well, fountain, cistern, or river landing. Iron hooks and long poles are used to tear away burning thatch, wood, or hangings before fire spreads. No one can quite agree how effective such arrangements would have been during a serious palace fire. The household may possess regulations, equipment, and trained officers, yet panic, darkness, smoke, and narrow stairs can quickly defeat careful plans. Many people sleep behind curtains or inside unfamiliar rooms, making warning them difficult. The cry of fire therefore carries a particular terror. Bells may be rung, doors beaten, and names shouted through corridors. Courtiers emerge wrapped in gowns, caps, blankets, or whatever clothing lies nearest. Servants rush barefoot across cold floors, chests containing jewels and records are dragged towards safer courtyards if there is time. Even a false alarm leaves the household shaken. A smoking candlewick can fill a room with enough haze to wake its occupants. A coal dropped from a warming pan may scorch linen and produce a bitter smell. The fire can be smothered quickly, but the bed is stripped and examined while the sleeper waits beside the hearth. Some treat such incidents as warnings from heaven. A flame that appears without an obvious cause may be interpreted as an omen of political unrest, death, or divine displeasure. Others blame careless servants, faulty chimneys, or damp wood. Historians continue to debate how strongly supernatural interpretations shaped immediate responses, but prayer often accompanies practical action. Fire is not the only reason for a midnight summons. A messenger may arrive carrying news considered too urgent to wait until morning. The gatehouse guard examines his warrant by lantern light before allowing him through the wicket. His horse is flecked with mud, and his cloak smells of rain, sweat, and the road. He may have ridden from a coastal town, border fortress, noble estate, or monastery. Perhaps a ship has arrived with foreign dispatches. Perhaps unrest has been reported in a distant county. Perhaps a powerful person has died. The message is carried inward through guarded doors while grooms lead the exhausted horse toward the stable. Waking the monarch is not done casually. The letter first reaches a chamber officer, secretary, or counsellor capable of deciding whether the matter is truly urgent. That person must judge the danger of delay against the danger of disturbing royal sleep. A mistake in either direction can have consequences. If the decision is made, a trusted attendant enters the bedchamber quietly. The candle is raised, the sovereign is addressed by title and informed that important news has arrived. Curtains move, attendants wake upon nearby pallets, and the carefully completed bedtime ceremony begins to reverse itself. A fur-lined gown is brought, slippers are placed upon the floor, a table is cleared for papers and writing instruments. Within minutes, counsellors may be summoned from chambers scattered across the palace. They arrive in varying states of dress, carrying seals, keys, or notes gathered in haste. Other summonses are more personal. A royal woman may go into labour during the night, drawing midwives, physicians, ladies, chaplains, and servants toward her chamber. Fires are increased, water heated, linen prepared, and relics brought near the bed. The household waits for news that carries dynastic importance far beyond the room. Childbirth customs surround the chamber with both practical care and inherited belief. Windows and doors may be closed to preserve warmth and privacy. Knotted cords are sometimes loosened because knots are thought to hinder delivery. A blessed girdle, relic, or written prayer may be placed near the labouring woman. Those who recorded such events never fully agreed about every ritual, and customs differed across families and generations. Yet childbirth remains a dangerous threshold, feared by women of every rank. The palace may possess skilled attendants and expensive remedies, but wealth cannot guarantee survival. Death can also summon the household without warning. An elderly courtier, sick servant, or visiting noble may decline suddenly after midnight. A priest is called to hear confession and administer the final rites. Candles are lit around the bed, and those present pray as the sleeper's breathing becomes slower. Once death occurs, the chamber changes. Mirrors or valuable hangings may be covered or removed. The body is washed, arranged, and watched. Messages are prepared for relatives and royal officers. If the deceased is important, funeral arrangements begin before dawn. A suspicious death creates another kind of alarm. Doors may be guarded, servants questioned, and cups or medicines set aside for examination. Poison is often feared when illness moves quickly, though natural disease can produce the same sudden symptoms. Rumour reaches the kitchens before the physician has offered an opinion. Intruders are less common than stories suggest, but palace officers prepare for them. A figure seen climbing a garden wall, a boat approaching a private landing, or an unknown man found near a restricted stair can bring armed guards running through the dark. The suspect may be a thief, a drunken servant, a lost visitor, or someone with more dangerous intentions. The palace's confusing architecture adds to the uncertainty. Courtyards connect through arches. Small doors open onto spiral stairs. Covered passages lead between older and newer buildings. A person who knows these routes can move quietly, while one unfamiliar with them may become trapped behind a locked gate. Dogs provide an imperfect alarm. Mastiffs and other large animals may guard yards, kennels, and entrances. Their barking wakes servants, but dogs respond to many things: strangers, foxes, other dogs, or movement in the stables. A sudden silence can be considered almost as worrying as noise. Tonight, however, the palace escapes disaster. The shutter has been secured, no smoke rises above the roofs. The messenger at the gate carries only instructions concerning a delayed royal journey. Important enough for an officer, but not enough to wake the monarch. The rider receives bread, ale, and a place near the guardroom fire. His wet cloak hangs from a peg while steam rises from the wool. A groom rubs down the horse and checks its hooves for stones from the muddy road. The watch resumes its measured rhythm. Lanterns cross the courtyards. Guards exchange quiet words at appointed points. Behind shuttered windows, courtiers settle again beneath blankets, though some remain awake, listening for another cry. Above the palace, the clouds begin to break. A few stars appear between drifting bands of grey. Far beyond the walls, the roads remain empty, the villages dark, and the fields silvered with frost. The deepest part of night is nearly over. Kitchen fires wait beneath ash, chapel candles burn low, and those who have kept watch begin to sense the approach of morning long before any light appears in the eastern sky. Long before sunrise appears above the palace roofs, those who have remained awake notice the first quiet signs of morning. Darkness has not lifted, but it has changed. The wind feels colder near the end of night, the watchfires have sunk lower, and the silence beyond the walls seems less deep than it did at midnight. In the gatehouse, a guard stretches stiffened legs and adds wood to the fire. His replacement will arrive. The rider who brought the late message sleeps on a bench nearby, his cloak still damp. In the stables, horses shift as grooms move among them with lanterns and hay. The palace wakes from its outer rooms inward. Kitchen workers are among the first to rise. Ash is drawn away from banked coals, revealing a red glow preserved through the night. Kindling catches, cauldrons return to their hooks, and bread dough prepared earlier is examined. Water is carried for broth and washing. Bread, ale, cheese, cold meat, or pottage will be enough for most servants before work begins. No one can quite agree upon a single hour when every Tudor palace rose. Royal habits and seasons altered the rhythm, yet bells provided a familiar framework. A chapel bell sounded before many rooms had opened, calling clergy and early worshippers toward prayer. Its voice crosses the courtyards and passes through shutters into sleeping chambers. Farther away, it reaches cottages and a monastery beyond the fields. A brother rises and walks through a cold cloister. A traveller in a roadside inn remembers how many muddy miles still lie ahead. Within the palace, servants begin removing the night. Chamber pots are carried down rear stairs. Basins are emptied and filled with fresh water. Candles burned to stubs are collected. Curtains are opened cautiously, and shutters creak outward to admit grey light that makes the remaining flames seem weak. Cold air moves through stale smoke, perfume, sleeping breath, and the scent of herbs among the rushes. Beds are turned back, blankets shaken, and linen gathered for washing. Those who slept on pallets rise before the people they serve. A page folds his blanket. A chambermaid smooths her sleeves. A servant warms stockings near the fire. In the royal apartments, awakening remains ceremonial. Trusted attendants enter softly, replenish the fire, and wait for signs that the monarch is ready. Bed curtains are opened at the proper moment. Water, clothing, and a morning drink are brought forward by those entitled to perform each duty. Soon the day gathers around the sovereign. Secretaries wait with letters. Councillors request instructions. Officers report upon visitors, journeys, and household matters. The physician may bring news from the sick chamber. Perhaps the fever has eased. Perhaps it has not. A priest completes early prayers while candle smoke rises toward the chapel roof. A servant snuffs the lights no longer required, leaving the altar illuminated by growing daylight. Protective charms and relics are returned to boxes or left near those who still need them. The fears of darkness do not vanish, but morning makes them easier to name. A strange knock becomes a loose shutter. A shadow becomes a hanging disturbed by air. A troubling dream becomes a story told quietly over breakfast. Historians continue to debate how sharply Tudor people separated night from day in their thoughts. Darkness carried danger, but it also offered privacy, companionship, prayer, music, rest, and the chance to speak beyond the formal gaze of the court. The palace after sunset was another version of the same household, narrowed by firelight and made more intimate by closed doors. In the courtyards, the watch is relieved. Keys pass from one officer to another. The wicket opens for workers, suppliers, and messengers known to the guards. A cart approaches with firewood. Stable servants lead a horse into the cold air, where its breath forms a pale cloud. Beyond the walls, mist moves over winter fields as the muddy road appears between hedges, and village roofs emerge from darkness one by one. Smoke rises from cottage chimneys. A market woman walks toward town, passing a roadside cross darkened by years of rain. A sealed letter rests inside an oak chest. A ribbon lies beneath folded linen. Some acts will be forgotten. Others may influence decisions far beyond the palace. Yet most nights leave no great mark upon history. They are made of smaller things, a cook covering coals with ash, a guard listening to rain, a laundress sorting linen, a page waiting beside a door, and a tired courtier drawing a wool blanket closer against the cold. These lives rarely enter chronicles, though they sustain the court from dusk until dawn. The fires brighten, bells call the household forward, doors open, footsteps return to the galleries, and voices rise where only whispers had been heard. Soon the hall will fill again, petitions will be presented, horses saddled, meals served, and royal business carried through familiar forms. But for one final moment, the night still lingers in the corners. It remains beneath bed curtains, within the scent of extinguished candles, and in the fading red of the watchfire. It rests upon wet courtyard stones and follows the last shadows retreating beneath the gatehouse arch. And now the palace may begin to recede. The guarded doors grow distant. The chapel bell softens across the fields. Muddy roads stretch quietly between sleeping villages, old manor houses, stone churches, abbeys, and forests touched by the final light of the moon. Generations will pass through these rooms. Fires will be lit and covered, beds warmed and emptied, letters sealed and burned. The names of kings and queens will remain in books, while the footsteps of countless servants fade into worn stairways and silent courtyards. Still, for a little while, memory keeps one candle burning. Its flame rests against old stone, steady and small, until morning grows brighter around it. Then that light, too, becomes unnecessary. Let the bells drift farther away now. Let the roads become quiet. The fires sink gently beneath ash, and the palace settle into the distance. The night has carried everyone safely toward morning, and there is nothing more that must be done. The doors are closed, the villages are still. The last watchman lowers his lantern, and the world grows soft, peaceful, and dark.